What s.e.xual act is overrated? On the beach, sand. Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? I thought not. It's not a story the Jedi would tell you. It's a Sith legend. Darth Plagueis was a dark lord of the Sith, so powerful and so wise, he could use the Force to influence the midichlorians to create life. He had such a knowledge of the dark side that he could even keep the ones he cared about from dying. The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural. He became so powerful the only thing he was afraid of was losing his power, which eventually, of course, he did. Unfortunately, he taught his apprentice everything he knew. Then his apprentice killed him in his sleep. Ironic. He could save others from death, but not himself. It's great. It's just a Redditism, it was said, became top comment, and then every time this question reappears, every 2 months or so, it's the top comment again, mostly repeated by people that haven't had never mind on the beach. I know it's a leap to say op, and all the other copy pasta carbon copy Redditors are virgins. But honestly, if they had anything interesting or novel to add from their own experiences, they wouldn't need to rely on Reddit tropes. For your info, on the beach is great. I love sea swimming and napping in the sun, so having then a nap on the beach and waking up to jump in the sea is just the best afternoon. While standing or doggy will basically remove all the risk of sand. See, that's how I know most who repeat haven't tried. It's very easy to avoid. Black FLIs. I can deal with the sand if I throw down a big blanket. It's the black FLIs nibbling at my sensitive bits I don't like. Or any bits. Which is why I don't go to the beach anymore. The last time I went, I ended up with 4 blackfly bites on the bottom of my foot and couldn't walk for a few days. Never again. I was born in the city, but bring your Lake Michigan dinner really go to the beach very much there. But then in 2006 I found myself living in Corpus Christi. Shortly after I got there, found myself living on North Beach, also named Corpus Christi Beach. It was still in a developed, but I have a lot of on the beach, and I love it all the time. I had with an Irish guy on a beach once. This was in California, where I'm from, and afterwards, he was fiddling around with his hand between my legs, and he said, "Aha, a tiny grain of sand." And I laughed because he sounded exactly like Lucky the Leprechaun. So I said, "Why don't you make a wish and fly away?" And he got kind of offended. You might have to be middle-aged and American, and have watched a lot of cereal commercials in your childhood, to get why it was so funny that he said that. I can only speak for me and my husband. The flight was half empty, and the plane was huge. We were young, and thought this would be a cool story. Which it sort of is, I guess, since I'm telling it 25 years later. In some cases, tight spaces can work with you. This is not one of those cases. It's about as comfortable as doing in a car parked on the shoulder where you're trying not to be seen from whizzing by on the highway. Totally subpar fact. Please take my word for it, you do not want to have in the bathroom of any commercial airliner. For starters, people are more likely to miss aircraft toilet bowls compared to your standard toilets. The sticky floor is not because of water. Furthermore, aerosolized fecal matter or toilet plume is significantly more problematic in an aircraft bathroom. Crew rest areas or first-class bathrooms only. I recently flew Qantas Economy and couldn't believe how small the bathroom was. I had to enter and exit the same way as I couldn't turn around, and actually had to open the door reaching back over my shoulder to wash my hands. Did a rudimentary measure of the width using my arms, and it measured 58 centimeters at its widest. That's without the basin and mirror, so there's no way of getting lucky in there unless we both pull down our pants before we go in. I'm no flight attendant, but I think that sort of thing might be frowned upon. Oh my God, yes. I find public bathrooms so disgusting, and don't want to touch anything in them. Planes are one of the grossest places ever to me, and the bathrooms are so small, it's hard to avoid touching every surface in there. For a small person like me, I hold it to a point of discomfort on planes cause the bathrooms gross me out so much I can't imagine going in there for why time. Get a private pilot's license. Rent a plane. Take your SO up to 6,000 feet and do the deed. Flying a small plane isn't tough. and unless you live by the mountains, there isn't anything to run into. Make sure you keep the plane level, and you'll be fine. Now I'm thinking of starting a small business. Get a plane, and but a black loveseat luxurious back seat in it. Get one of those limo dividers to separate me from the customers. Get up to altitude. Put up the divider and let them go to town. Charge $500 for the experience. Flamingo Air does this. It's a flight school that operates out of Cincinnati's Municipal Airport Lunken, of all places, but they also offer sightseeing tours. One of them is called the Romantic Tour. It's $495, and that gets you an hour of flight time, a cabin with comfortable cushion seating, and a bottle of champagne. It was a cool experience, but was basically regular, except there was a bit of turbulence, and your surroundings are pretty loud because you're on an airplane, and a pilot is there, but he's busy flying the plane. Flight attendant here. Please don't. On my aircrafts I'm sat right next to the labs. I really don't care to hear this. Also, more importantly, while yes, there are 2 masks in there in the event of a decompression, if you're already heavily exerting yourself, and you're going to be far more susceptible to hypoxia. If it's a slow decompression, you might lose consciousness before the masks even drop. So for your safety and the safety of your partner, do it on the ground. It's not worth it. Truly witnessed that on a flight a few years back when traveling for work. I was sat right by the bathroom entrance, and occasionally the flight attendants would walk by and just have that wow look on their face and laugh with their coworkers. I will admit I found it comical, but I couldn't even imagine trying to navigate around for square feet. I have a nurse friend who had this patient. Condensed milk on dick. Everything is fine. Both get some sleep. And then, when he wakes up, there's small ants everywhere. Yes, inside his dick. She told me, when she pressed ants with condensed milk keep coming. After this, I could never. I put marshmallow fluff on my dude's nipples and cock, and it was so fucking funny how quickly it got everywhere and so messy. My poor bedsheet. I was cracking up laughing when I saw I got it all over his face after kissing him. It was a little hot, but mostly just really funny and fun. Took a while to lick off though, but nothing a hot shower together can't fix. I second that. When I was 21, I was casually seeing a 30-year-old lady, and one night in particular she decided to lounge naked on the couch naked in front of me while she would insert strawberries into herself and then feed them to me one by one. It was so uni, and I was hoping she would stop, but she went through the whole punnet. I'm cringing thinking about it again, and I really wish it never happened. In my very inexperienced younger days 1920-ish, I was having a very wally charged discussion with an older woman, older than I was. Mid to late 30s probably, and she brought up chocolate syrup. I said it seems like it would just be a mess, and she very quickly responded with it depends on where you put it, and that statement completely blew my fucking mind. Nowadays thinking back on what she said makes me just think, oh, you're gonna give yourself a yeast infection. I don't know man, I've never had a bad time when the whipped cream, cherries, and chocolate sauce come out. S about to get wild. You haven't truly lived until you've had a woman mouth blast your meat after it's been turned into a full-blown s.e.xual dessert, complete with the cherry on top. Oh, and if she seductively eats the cherry and then ties the stem in a knot with her tongue, strap in, because you're about to blast the fafk off. Pool sucks. In the shower, pool, and hot tub should not include penetration. Stick with hand and mouth stuff, and move to the bed after. Learn to have longer sessions, my dude. Just to give you some hope, I tried it, and it was very hot, but the mechanics weren't very good. For a start, water isn't like lube at all, so it took a long time to work it in. But once in, after a while the natural lubricant started to allow some movement. But it's incredibly hard to thrust because of water resistance, so it's quite a slow sensual experience since it was indoor and at night in a glass house. Also, the cum was just released into the pool. It has a very good filtration system, but I still can't see it the same way. Everyone here is saying it's terrible, but the couple of times I've had in my hot tub was fantastic. The only hard part is that the water resistance makes it hard to speed up as things get more intense. But having her on top and gyrating instead feels amazing. But worst case, You can just stand up and start facking doggy style to finish after some slower warmer in the water. My first reaction was you were oh so wrong, but that's too judgmental. Let's go with your mileage may vary. I'm not sure why lube was not an issue the first time, but about the third time it became a thing. The oil-based lubes are excellent. The first time I'm 61 then lasted and stayed hard for 2 hours. I thought maybe the cold water kept me from completing, although that could be other conditions. For any doctor thinking and cure that condition, think you are insane. I got to have for 2 straight hours at my age 61 at the time. It was awesome and a good physical workout. Men, get in good physical condition. Yes, her infection is a risk. It's not a certainty. 6 events, 1 infection. And that doesn't necessarily come from the pool. Hot tub works too. I do sometimes complete in the pool, but clearly I last longer. Not always 2 hours. She's not complaining. I dare to disagree. Had vacations with my girlfriend a few months ago, and we had for the first time inside the pool, and it was amazing. For the possible downvotes, it may not work for you, but my personal experience was amazing. On the beach, the drink is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but actually facking in the thin white sand is ridiculously uncomfortable. Just imagine a crystal of sand inside your urethra and think about it. It's romantic and pretty adventurous. If you mean like, in general, life doesn't really have a meaning, but we don't need to be here for a reason. All that matters is trying to take the good from what life can give us and make experiences along the way. If it's a life's dream to join it, get 2 adjoining business class seats, have your gal sit on your lap either way round, remove clothing in the way, cover the site with the blanket, and try to keep the noise down. Most of your fellow travelers will be asleep, or wearing headphones watching a movie, and the flight crew will be busy, so you've got some leeway, but not a lot. Still beats trying it in the toilet. Those are barely large enough to serve their intended function to begin with. Oh, and there's not a lot of them, so you're likely to get interrupted by someone banging on the door. If you catch any half-empty flight, and you have the middle seat empty, you can at least pull off the oral Mile High Club. Just needs a blanket and apparently sleepy partner. We pulled this move off once, but she has given you plenty of handies on commercial flights. As for the real Mile High Club, I'm 6'2" and we can't afford a private jet. In the shower, one of you will always be cold. The risk of falling. Water is not lubricant. Height is always an issue. Congrats to the folks who are short enough or have sufficiently hardy knees to pull off doggy style in the shower, but faft no for me on all of that. Oral, general foreplay, soaping and rubbing up on each other and making out under a warm shower. Those are the fun bits as far as I'm concerned. Not if you're on vacation. The floor tiles are such design they make marks on your knees, and one of your friend asks afterwards, "Oh, when did you get a knee op?" Didn't know. Then you freeze. The whole group realizes, burst out laughing, you're red in face, and the friend is apologizing profusely for asking the question. I disagree. For me, perspective of a guy, receiving wasn't nice, because I was more focused on making sure the water hit my back and not my partner's face, and the constant feeling of water everywhere severely detracted from the experience. Giving was also not great for the reason of water in my face, which made it hard to breathe. Overall, not great IMO. Don't get me wrong, I used to love shower, and I don't really agree with a lot of the comments here, but at this point, I've hit my head doing doggy multiple times now, and I've slipped and fell in multiple other positions. Maybe I'm just clumsy, but there are better ways than this. Maybe fun on occasion, but definitely not a regular thing for me anymore. Like on the beach, it's just a Reddit trope. The person repeating it hasn't tried, likely hasn't ever had, but is repeating the same top 10 comments from the last time this was asked. No new insight needed. This was popular last month. It will be a popular comment forever. As Anman, this is one of my favorite positions, but you can't do it as a normal cowgirl where the man's legs are inside the woman's. She needs to get on all fours. I put my legs over top of her calves kinda, on the outside of her body, and then I sink her in. I've got quite flexible hips as well, so I can open my legs pretty well for her to sink deeper. It don't need to go fast or hard, which I usually like, but for reverse cowgirl, I want it slow, with long strokes, so I can take in the view properly. I'm never worried about snapping my dick that way. It's just one of the greatest positions for me. Not necessarily for nutting, but for enjoyment. For the finish, I'd rather be on top. Learned about this in a fucking lewd comic I read Lamel, but if you find forward and back instead of bouncing up and down, it not only makes it easier to ride, but also gives more pleasure for both partners. Have heard discussions about this. Many say the same thing. Learned about this in a fucking lewd comic I read Lamel, but if you find forward and back instead of bouncing up and down, it not only makes it easier to ride, but also gives more pleasure for both partners. Have heard discussions about this. Many say the same thing. I'm just gonna say it, and I am not sure how to describe what it is I'm going to say. For me, it feels amazing when it's not lined up exactly right. When her up and down motion on me is combined with a little hip gyration that is rocking more horizontal toward my head, feet instead of vertically up and down. You need to find your groove. My ex was crazy in bed, also crazy in the head, and we did it 3 times a day, sometimes more, and as a result, I had incredible staying power, which she loved, because she thoroughly enjoyed getting railed for an hour or more, having multiple orgasms. So I just had to get her into the right position and get into a groove. I don't miss her, but I do miss being able to do that. My husband got put on meds that literally would not let him finish. I did, multiple times, but after an hour and a half, I was tapping out. It got to the point I told him he needed to get off them or enjoy his fleshlight cause I couldn't handle. I'm a fan for the morning after tenderness, but when I have to waddle like a duck to soak in a hot bath the next day, well, that's not sexy. I always felt bad about taking breaks cause I was worried I'd offended the woman cause I would take longer to finish. But in reality, it's cause my heart would be beating so fast that it would start to hurt. Especially if I was doing 90% of the work. Usually got around it by trying to let the woman ride me, but then they'd get tired quickly as well. Lol, another way I'd get around it was fingering the woman and or have them jerk me off. 69. My mind wanders way too easily, so I need to concentrate to be able to come. So adding in the extra work of holding my weight up and also concentrating on giving a good BJ while getting eaten out, like buddy, I'm just gonna lay here with this in my mouth for a minute, sorry. Reverse cowgirl. It's hot, but my dick doesn't normally point that far down and it hurts. The key is to put your legs outside of her legs. I know it doesn't sound intuitive, but try it. You end up with a penetration angle that's much more like doggy, and you have better leverage to push up into her to get a good rhythm going. She can also rub her clit or use a vibrator while riding if she's into that. Reverse cowgirl. Have you tried your legs on top? I find it feels more comfortable for all parties involved. Basically, there's 2 ways to go about reverse cowgirl. Intuitive way. Guy lays down. Girl puts both legs over him and is just regular cowgirl, but in reverse. Unintuitive, strangely pressure relieving knee pretzel way. Girl gets on her knees. Not all 4 is blowjob. Not doggy. Guy lays behind her on his back and places his thighs over her lower calves. Girl sits back and has a natural seat cushion man's thighs. This creates lesser penetration, but a much more comfortable riding position for the lady. I would recommend this as a finisher for the male more than a mid-way pleasure position for the lady, but that's just using my admittedly average size member. The way that I usually do it is like this, but swing one of my legs over his right leg with his knee bent, so I'm slightly turned to the right and basically grinding his thigh as I ride. It's more stabilizing, and I feel like I can move my hips more and not worry about snapping his dick. It works well for me, and is my favorite position. Do any women actually enjoy titty fucking? I've seen it in porn, but it seems more like a fetishization of a body part than a pleasurable act. I had a guy friend who said it was one of his favorite things to do, but I can't imagine his partner getting much out of it. I've never tried it, because the thought of a woman having to just lie there and pretend like she's enjoying having a dick rubbed on her chest is kind of a turn off for me. I dunno, I only tried a couple of times, but titty fucking came up jokingly and she went, "No way I can make you come with just these," implying her boobs are not so big, and I don't come very easily. I had to prove her wrong. She was very satisfied with herself. She says it was hot. I think she enjoyed it in a completed a puzzle kind of way more than a s.e.xual way. If someone I really care about enjoys it, then I love it. It's really not pleasurable for me, but neither is sucking dick, and I love that for the same reason. It's exciting to excite your partner, but I'd still much prefer the latter because it feels much more intimate to me. Titty fucking doesn't have to be a completely soulless act though, despite being almost exclusively depicted that way. It can be very intimate. Blowjob with the condom on. Now, if you just want to put it on that way, that's hot. Those of you pointing out that this wasn't really highly rated to begin with, I agree. It was just the only thing that really came to mind, thinking about disappointing activities in the bedroom. We aren't also lucky as to have a threesome with twins on the beach at sunset in our past to find a bit overrated. But it's good to know that maybe I'm not missing out on the greatest joy in life here. As for, who the hell does this? There have been plenty of examples given of this still being a thing, after quite some time with their so at least it wasn't some unique hang-up to hold against these ladies. And it's not like I pissed and moaned about it at the time, because who wants to go to bed with someone like that? While dating my husband, we both had awkward living situations and couldn't have at each other's houses, so we could only have car. The worst part was driving around for an hour trying to find a safe spot where we wouldn't get caught. I enjoy public per se, but in places like trails, woods, etc., places that are technically public or outdoors, but not really at risk of being caught. Somebody below mentioned the possibility of kids seeing. Nothing would make me less horny and sick to my stomach than not only being actually caught or in trouble, but a minor seeing anything. Absolutely horrendous and terrible. I would never in my life put anyone, especially a kid, at risk of seeing anything. And even an adult. Like, how fucking awkward is that? But the fact does remain that if we're in an isolated outside space, outdoors can be incredibly erotic, and I think I just enjoy that aspect of it very much. Trying and failing makes for nice stories though. I was with this girl, and we were overdoing it a bit with PDA when we're at a bar with friends. After getting for that, we decided to take a walk, and found a nice spot, a nook in what's left of the medieval city wall that once surrounded our town, to continue our now not so public displays of affection. At some point, all the buttons on my jeans were undone. Her bra was undone underneath her dress, and there were hands in all kinds of places that'd be hard to find an innocent explanation for. At which point a guy walking his dog passes by, shines a flashlight at us, and yells at us to get a room. At the time, that got both of us out of the mood. At the time. Now, apparently the girl really liked where we were going until we were rudely interrupted. So she set up something similar. For the morning after I'd stayed over at her place, she had picnic in the woods planned. Sure, sounds lovely. Shared some nice food, and half a bottle of wine. Turns out she didn't just bring the blanket to keep sand out of the food, but had bigger plans. Of course, I go along. We're at roughly the same stage as the last time when we get interrupted again. But this time by a mechanized infantry company. The lady had chosen the spot right next to one of their access paths towards a training area. They were a lot nicer about it than the dog walker, honestly. I mostly got cheers and thumbs up from them.